One of the things I wanted to preface my presentation with is perhaps a similarity between North Cary and West Clare in the Wild Atlantic Way. WAW to me is WOW. I've been in both places in 2010, and then it took me 9 years to come back into spring of 2019, where my wife and I walked the Dingle Way for a little more than a week and just absolutely enjoyed ourselves. So again, I have a good bit of affinity with where you all live, and I would love to visit again. Of course, you all are always welcome to come here as well. So what I'd like to talk to you about is give you kind of a background on what our both human and natural environment is here in Jackson Hole and Teton County. What economic impacts tourism has contributed to here, and then give you kind of an overview historically and then a current state of tourism in Jackson Hole. Run through some visitor experiences and how our tourism destination marketing entities, based on their research, message out to the market that indicates an interest in coming to Jackson Hole for what qualities we have. Then I'd like to summarize just very quickly what our sustainable tourism development is. I certainly have a whole host of slides just on that, but that's not included in today's presentation. And then what lessons and opportunities have we learned? What would I like to have known for Jackson Hole 50 years ago, for instance? So another thing I'd like to say to preface about Teton County, Wyoming, is that it's part of the greater Yellowstone region. And outside of Alaska, it's the largest undeveloped area of nature and wildness in the United States. And so it's not surprising that people come to Teton County in the greater Yellowstone region because of its wildness, because of its emptiness, because of its wildlife, the pristine nature, the wildness of nature. And I believe there's some similarity in terms of wildness of nature and why people come to Jackson Hole, as well as why people come to North Cary and West Clare. So Teton County is made up of Jackson Hole in the southern half of Yellowstone National Park. And our region is 4,200 square miles in size. 97% of the land has some level of protection to it because it's federal land, whether it's national parks, national forests, the National Elk Refuge in Teton County. And then another 1% is privately protected areas, primarily conservation easements. And as you can see, here's the federal lands that comprise, they're in Teton County, Wyoming, and the dates that they were established with Yellowstone starting back in 1872. And then we have wild and scenic rivers as well as designated wilderness areas where unmotorized human presence is not allowed. So we have a whole range of kinds of lands as well as how people can access them. Our year-round population in Teton County is 23,500, but in the summertime, our peak season, which is June through September, that increases to somewhere around 70,000, almost triples in the number of people that are here. So you can start to get a sense of not necessarily how many people come here in a given year, which prior to COVID was about 4 million a year in Yellowstone and close to that in Grand Teton National Park, but also the challenges that probably that implies. The tourism industry here in Teton County is a $1.3 billion industry. It has created essentially 8,860 jobs annually, which is about 1/3 of our total workforce. The average daily visitor spend here in the summers is $285. In the winter, it's more. The average length of stay in the summer is 3 nights. We wish it would be more. In the winter, it is more. It's around 5 nights as well. And visitor spending by commodity purchase, you can see probably obviously that accommodations represents a good bit of the visitor spend. I also said visitor spending by commodity purchase in that graph below, but that is actually has to do with the earnings of the different parts of our tourism economy. That's a mistitle here. But you can see, again, accommodations and food service comprise about 2/3 of the earnings that the tourism industry has in Teton County. Early tourism in Jackson Hole. So a point that I wanted to make, and it is still true today, because we are #1 arts community in the United States for medium-size or small-size communities as well. And that's part of our heritage, starting with when brought back to Congress were paintings by Thomas Moran and photographs by a guy by the name of Jackson, to show U.S. Congress that there were lands that were worth protecting. Eventually, that led to the creation of Yellowstone National Park in 1872. And really what was key to that support, as well as key to this day for attracting visitors and the appreciation they have for wildlands, is art, visual arts in particular. So some attractions back in the late 1800s were typically the kinds of things you would probably not be surprised of. People coming here to climb and to hike, horseback riding, certainly wildlife viewing. And then dude ranches tended to be where the majority of the people had their overnight stays in Jacksonville. There was not a lot of accommodations outside of dude, or what we call guest ranches in Jackson Hole. The National Elk Refuge was also established early on to protect the elk herd that could no longer migrate through the valley because the town of Jackson blocked their way. And then in the 1920s, a decision was made by the core group of businesses that Jackson doesn't want to be a place where visitors just pass through on the way to somewhere else, in this case, Yellowstone National Park, but also wanted to create a destination in itself. So this Jackson Hole Club was the early entity that evolved to become the Chamber of Commerce in the 1920s. At the same time, the Snow King ski area was established, and the tow rope was run by a truck and a pulley system back then. And then very importantly, Grand Teton National Park was also established. The Rockefeller family bought up a whole host of land from working ranches that just could not make it, and they sold out to the Rockefeller family, and the Rockefeller family donated tens of thousands of acres to the American people, and that was in 1929. So going to more recent history, some of the more significant events that occurred that has continued to contribute to the development of tourism in Jackson Hole is our town square was established. So that's the center of our town, and actually the center of our business community that our visitors go to typically first. The Ward Hotel, high-end accommodations. That's a picture on the right-hand side. Their lobby. That's wins all sorts of awards for its history and heritage. People want to stay in a place that reflects the history and heritage of Jackson Hole. Then Jackson Lake Lodge opened in Grand Teton National Park. And so that started to be a place where people could stay overnight inside Grand Teton National Park. Then importantly, Jackson Hole started to evolve into a winter destination as well with Jackson Hole Mountain Resort, our big mountain. That's the picture on the right-hand side in 1966. And that's still the main attraction, the reason why people come here in the wintertime from December through March. And then also importantly, we started to evolve into a place that people could have indoor experiences, not just outdoor, with the creation of the United States' National Museum of Wildlife Art, the Center for the Arts, through the Grand Teton Music Festival and Walk Festival Hall in Teton Village. And Teton Village eventually now is its own destination, both in the summer and winter within Teton County, as well as the town of Jackson. And I just want to make a point that if you're a business like a tour operator and you wanted to go into a national park, you have to have a commercial use authorization. It's an official legal permit. And in order to get that, you have to have your guides, your staff go through a training program that meets the minimum standards from the National Park Service. Oftentimes, the National Park Service itself provides that training. So that provides some level of consistency and standardization and quality of experience to visitors through a tour guiding training program. What are our trends now? We've evolved from a domestic to an internationally recognized tourism destination. We are combining the vibrancy of the town of Jackson and Teton Village now with spectacular outdoor settings, wildlife, and other outdoor recreation experiences. We have a system or network of bike pathways now, over 67 miles, that are connecting Teton Village to the town of Jackson and the Grand Teton National Park. So we have a whole network of trails that people can actually walk, bike, rollerblade around to experience different parts, and they can get out of their cars and not be part of what is an increasing issue with traffic congestion here. And obviously, our key attractions are wildlife, scenery, recreation, and our culture, Western American culture. And our visitation has increased by almost 20% from 2014 to 2017. And it certainly has since then to 2019 pre-COVID. Our taxable sales along with that has increased by 20%. But also what has increased is the stress on our infrastructure and services, the traffic congestion caused by both visitors and our workforce that's commuting from other valleys into Jackson Hole, mainly because they can't afford the housing within Jackson Hole. Business staffing operations is stressed to keep adequate staff, especially during COVID, when we have our foreign workers are not coming to Jackson Hole. So that has caused a number of issues with businesses being able to stay open as long as they want or stay open at all. And their visitor experience has been somewhat degraded depending on the location due to the popularity of certain attractions and places to go. And very interesting, there's a tide out and tide in phenomena where during the day, people, they have breakfast, they leave their accommodations within the town of Jackson, Teton Valley, Teton Valley, but Teton Village, and as well as accommodation with the National Park, and they go out onto the land for the day to see wildlife, scenic drives, to recreate. And then in the evening, they come back to their accommodations to have dinner and so forth. So we have this flow of visitors, cars that go out during the day and then come back in. That's a daily phenomena that anyone can witness here in Jackson Hole. But really the key for our tourism economy to stay healthy is really to protect the very reasons why people come to our destination. I would like to say to any destinations, including yours with the Wild Atlantic Way, people are coming because they're of the authentic, perhaps unique in some cases, qualities that people have. There's a real thirst to go to places that feel wild, that feel like they can recharge and rest, and are also safe as well. So how are we doing right now? We are, you can see in May and June, we were only a fraction of our normal visitation in terms of visitors coming both by car and by plane, as well as our lodging occupancy and the revenue generated through taxes. But coming about July, we started to see visitation at the same level as we had in 2019. Then we exceeded visitation in August, and then we broke actually visitation records in the month of September. And really the phenomena there, and maybe this is self-evident, is that people are fleeing lockdown. They want to get out of confinement. They want to go to places that are perceived as being safer, less populated. And Jackson Hole and our area are seen as places like that. I would venture to say that places along North Cary and West Clare have that similar attraction to visitors once lockdown is over. So what are our experiences for guests? Well, we have a whole host of experiences, both summer and winter. And you can see in the slide here, all the different activities that we have. Scenic drives certainly are part of our attraction as well. Wildlife is a huge attraction. We have wildlife in diversity in numbers greater than what we had 100 years ago due to some very significant, consistent conservation efforts initiatives. But you can see all the different recreations and physical activities, if you will, that occur both in summer and winter. We also have arts and culture as well. So like I said, the National Museum of Wildlife Art in the United States. We have local heritage and history museums, numerous festivals and fairs that are for both residents and visitors, and in a way that's for visitors and residents get to meet one another, and that's a very rich experience for visitors. And then we have a diverse food and drink offering in Jackson Hole, a lot of high-end as well as middle level restaurants, as well as sort of the usual fast foods, but we also have slow foods and farmer markets that are more toward the authenticity and locality of Jackson Hole as well. And then I'm going to zoom through some pictures. So you can see we have a significant wolf population now that they were introduced in the late 1990s. In wintertime, if you take a sleigh ride into the National Elk Refuge, you can see probably in one field of view about 8,000 elks, such as the picture you saw here. Bison, that's our Wyoming state animal. You can see a mother and baby there. And then our famous bear 399 with 4 of her cubs this year have been all around and very visible. You can see pictures of our summer activities and the scenery that they're within. And in the middle, that's the antler arch from elk antlers. There's 4 arches in each of the 4 directions that make up the 4 points in our corners of our town square. And then in winter, perhaps not surprisingly, we have skiing, we have fat tire biking, snowmobiling, cross-country skiing, we have dog sledding, snowshoeing, and so forth. And then just very quickly, this is from the Wyoming Office of Tourism. They know that the key to Wyoming tourism is to attract people to the icons of Wyoming, which are Yellowstone and Grand Teton National Parks primarily. And so there's travel itineraries that, for the most part, lead from one place in Wyoming and end up in one of the 2 or both national parks. And then within the national parks, there's morning and afternoon/evening itineraries that are promoted as well. And that gives people an idea to kind of do some armchair traveling and perhaps planning and then setting their intention and plans to actually come. Our tourism relationships, here's some of our key stakeholders in tourism. The Jackson Hole Travel and Tourism Board is responsible for marketing. Jackson Hole is a destination. They have $4.5 million out of the $7.7 million that we collect in bed tax or lodging tax. The remaining 40% is allocated by the town of Jackson. I'll show you where that money goes in a second. The Chamber of Commerce is a key entity for destination sales and visitor services. Central Reservations in Jackson Hole is also where visitors can go to book and plan for their vacations and their holidays in Jackson Hole. The Park Service, the Forest Service, our federal land management agencies are certainly key to our tourism industry in the way that they manage lands for both protecting the resources, providing for the enjoyment of the people. And then my organization, Riverman Foundation, we're the leading advocate and organization working for Jackson Hole to be a sustainable destination and to become stronger in destination management, not just in marketing. So the 2% tax collected, as I said, the Travel and Tourism Board has 60% of that. The town of Jackson has the remainder. That money that is spent by the lodging tax goes to significantly to destination marketing, but it also goes to community events. It funds community events, which again are for both residents and visitors. And you can see through the rest of the chart here, it goes to a number of other opportunities for supporting community organizations that have some relationship to tourism as well. In the very corner there, you see about $80,000 goes to the Shift Festival, where its theme is nature as medicine, and then for sustainability efforts, including my organizations. With the town and the county, that money is spent on services that are impacted by visitors. So it goes to our pathways, it goes to our START mass transit system, it goes to maintaining infrastructure and other services that both residents and visitors rely upon as well. Again, these charts can be shared with you, so I'm moving through these so we can have time for the panel discussion. Our tourism marketing strategic plan is essentially the message here is, and what's really key is that Jackson Hole needs to be marketed in a way that is in alignment with what our community's values are. If there's a disconnect, there would not be support from our public. And we have a state statute in Wyoming which says that every 4 years, the public votes on whether to continue assessing a lodging tax or a bed tax to our visitors here. And that's the significant source of funding for marketing Jackson Hole as a destination. So if our Travel and Tourism Board is not marketing Jackson Hole in a way that does reflect our community's values, public support will erode, and then that tax would not be supported and that money would go away. So what I'd like to show you is their promotional campaigns with the Jackson Hole Travel and Tourism Board. These campaigns are based on research of what visitors are interested in, what visitor demand is about. So if you will, these are appealing to the kinds of attractions and interests of our visitors here. So obviously where wild and serene convene, that is obviously a key attraction and benefit of coming to Jackson Hole, is to experience wildness, especially if you can get out of your cars and off the road and into some of the trails, into our national parks and national forests. And you can see some of the stats from social media of impressions of what interest level there are. Now, this is in 2018. I'm now going to show you 2019's promotional campaign. Again, it's some clever wording, I suppose. The hardest working gravity in America is skiing in Jackson Hole. What people call the Old West is what we call last night here, and that we're not just all about flowers and butterflies. We have tremendous scenery and iconic wildlife as well. So that was 2019. 2020. So you can see now we're continuing with Jackson Hole being responsibly wild, the Jackson Hole Wild campaign, if you will, theme, but also now, not surprisingly, you can see that we're committed to visitor safety, public health and safety of visitors and residents here, and then sort of the messaging about how to what we expect of visitors when they come here, whether they're people that are fleeing isolation and restrictions. We do have our restrictions here in terms of social distancing, wearing face masks, etc. So that's how it's evolved, not surprisingly. And then positioning the last real mountain town. Now, I know there'll be other mountain towns in the United States, elsewhere, that'll say, now, wait a minute, now Jackson Hole can't be the last real mountain town. But the subtitle, I think, is more important. Jackson Hole is a special place thanks to the long-standing tradition of conservation. And really, that's been our key, is protecting our natural areas and maintaining the integrity for enjoyment of not just the people that live and work in Jackson Hole, but also the people that come to visit here. And then our Jackson Hole Travel and Tourism Board also promotes specific tips or behaviors or values that we'd like our visiting public to embrace, as well as the people who work and live here. And as you can see, using public transit, get out of your car. This will help with us with lowering our carbon emissions. Give wildlife space. Don't go into conflicts with wildlife. It's not a good idea to feed the bears, believe me. Don't rely on Disney for your wildlife education. I guess that's one way to say it. And you can see sort of the other messages here as well. My organization worked with over 230 students in our public schools here and private schools to create the Jackson Hole Sustainability Code of Conduct. And that was a really fun experience, part of our overall Green Generations program. We were bringing up the next generation to embrace sustainability and understand that tourism doesn't have to be just about the economic benefits, but also to embrace the environmental and social responsibilities that contribute to the economic benefits as well. So they helped us create this code of conduct, and we have a whole story about that on our website. And then the Take the Yellowstone Pledge. As Terry said, there's other places that have pledges as well. We have the Yellowstone Pledge as well that people can take. Then a summary of sustainable development in Jackson Hole. Like I said, I have a lot of charts that go into detail on each one of those 5 areas that are not sequential necessarily, but we're overlapping in our Development Jackson Hole Sustainable Destination Program, which started in earnest in 2014 and continues today. But really key is to do that baseline assessment and asset inventory. I know that I believe that North Cary and West Clare have done an inventory of assets that you have for tourism. I find it of immense value to also do a baseline assessment of how sustainable the tourism industry is against whatever standard that exists that you want to choose from to do that assessment. But that gives you a starting point and significant feedback to inform your planning for the future, so that tourism is not just only about the health of your economy, but also about the health of your environment and your community and your culture as well. And I won't go through these other areas as well, but really importantly is that whatever planning and organizations that you create embrace sustainable tourism standards, whether it's from the Future Tourism Coalition, whether it's from the Global Sustainable Tourism Council or other entities. Embrace those, and those will help you give some guideposts to use to guide your future, so that perhaps you don't repeat some mistakes that Jackson Hole has made growing organically as a tourism destination. So what tourism development is being planned for 2021? So we have a lot of distributed policies and plans with regards to sustainability in our community and sustainable tourism. But what our next step is to create one plan that brings all those different policies and plans together into one integrated, centralized set of plans that can guide, in some cases, regulate our industry going forward in a more sustainable way that, if you will, does protect the very reasons why people come to Jackson Hole. So that's one of the key areas that we'll be working on in 2021. What lessons and opportunities? Establish a vision early. Who do you want to be? Who do we want to be? Our vision is to be a world-leading sustainable community and destination. Come to an agreement, if not a consensus, at least a general agreement on what makes your destination authentic, that is attractive to visitors and to residents. You don't want to create a tourism destination that is in conflict with what residents really want the place to be for them to work and live in. Plan to sustain those qualities and think about balancing protection and promotion. It's tricky because it's hard to do that as an overall strategy without considering specific sites and seasons as well. Keep the outlying areas rural and wild. That's what gets our, that's what has established us as not just a domestic, but international travel and tourism destination for people to come here that have a real thirst for wildness, for real thirst for peace and serenity and quiet. Connect visitors with locals. So people more and more want to do that. They want to know what the stories are. They want an immersion experience, an authentic experience of our destinations. Consider one or more initiating events that bring together all the different stakeholders to energize the stakeholders and the communities that the stakeholders are in to work together toward the plans, goals, and policies, objectives, targets, actions that you set for yourself. Create and coordinate your DMMOs. The key here is the two M's is marketing and management really need to work together. They're two sides of the same coin. Think of it in that way. And that's something that we're continually working on here with a lot of people that are traditional marketing people, understanding that management needs to be done and needs to be done well in order for marketing to do well as well. Take the time to build relationships, one-on-one group meetings, a lot of virtual meetings. I drank my share of coffee with all of the meetings that I've been involved in, taking the time up front to really build those relationships, to build trust, which really have paved the way for increasing momentum for us to really implement our goals for being a sustainable tourism destination. Be careful what you wish for. If you do your job really well with marketing and don't do enough with the management side at the very beginning as well, then you may be challenged to sustain the very qualities that people want to come to visit you. And then do not under-resource communications, because you can do a great job with maintaining your destination, but if you don't communicate in a coordinated way, then that might go somewhat for naught. And then you can see the rest of these: strengthening local capacity where it's possible, a lot of education, a lot of training. And then, as you can see, focus on understanding your strength in areas that you need improvement. And then lastly, this picture is of my wife walking on the Dingo Way on her way to Donquin. So with that, sorry to have kind of sprinted through somewhat of my presentation. You will have a copy of it, but I'm glad to join our discussion now with Terry and with Misa.
Very much, Tim. Thank you, Misha. During all of that, Tim, I think you were unaware there were various problems that were not necessarily the connection between us and Wyoming. I think I had problems in Wales and others had problems. Anyhow, I think the majority of people were able to stay with you throughout. So thank you very much indeed. Oh. I'm assuming, unless Mark tells me any different, his connection's gone as well. So in that instance, if everyone is agreeable, then perhaps I'll just lead with a few questions of Tim and Misha. And if anybody else would like a question asked, then could they please put it onto the chat box, and I will then address that to Misha. So Misha, can you join us with your video as well, please? And the first question I'd like to ask of you both is the issue of leadership. I clearly know the success of any vision and mission and development plan is down to leaders, and leaders who are open to innovation and change. So perhaps both of you could answer the question, where does leadership change come from?
Misa, do you want to give that a shot first?
Tim, you can start.
We can't see you, Tim, and you're breaking up on us. So is Misha there, please?
Yeah, I'm here, and I can see Tim. So I think the problem with the connection might be in Wales.
Hello, is Misha there?
Yeah.
And Terry, my connection's been fine the whole way through, and Misa's loud and clear for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, there's clearly problems all over the place. But if Misha, can you hear me? Would you like to lead off and just say, where has the leadership come from in the Socha Valley?
The leadership always starts with one person, and this person always has a name, a face. In Socha Valley, it's been all the time a very passionate individual who had been managing the DMO for nearly 20 years now. You know him personally, Janko Humar. But the real change in leadership in terms of understanding tourism with its new roles, new challenges, new opportunities, new responsibilities and everything in Socha Valley, I think it came through the partnership among the 10 destinations within the region of Julian Alps. All these 10, out of these 10, we have like 5 bigger destinations: Bled, Bohinj, Kranjska Gora, Socha Valley. These people coming together and working together from 2016 on a regular basis, but even more so, even more actively and even more connected from this March onwards, from COVID. They have all taken this opportunity to really come together, and they came really joined in a passionate way forward towards this new normality, which needs to be even more balanced in order to be more resilient, to be better prepared for the future. So it started, Terry, now you're joining in. It started with one person, but then this energy of a partnership between the destination of Julian Alps, bringing a few more individuals who think in the same way together, discussing and going forward together.
Great, thank you. I mean, Tim, that sort of implies a a work with a limited group of people who want to make things happen, and then allow the word to spread out. Is that what happened in Jackson Hole?
Well, what's happened in Jackson Hole is that there's been some tendency among, and I think this is probably not unique to Jackson Hole, there's been some tendency among the general public expect local government to lead the way, but more than ever, our local government does not have the financial resources and the staffing to do that. So the private sector has really stepped up and worked with the public sector, local government, as well as state and federal government, which is a significant entity here in Jackson Hole, to create initiatives that are actually going to be more proactively, more strongly planning for the future of tourism in Jackson Hole, and that future Jackson Hole, including creating that integrated destination management plan and that destination stewardship council to oversee its development and implementation. So it's a private public sector combination or partnership that is leading the way. My organization has been the leading advocate since I retired from being the director of our Chamber of Commerce. In 2012, we've been the leading advocate for incorporating sustainability principles and policies in our tourism plan. So in a quick picture, that's sort of who's leading the change management here in Jackson Hole.
Jerry, can I just add, in Socha Valley, it's also been, next to this public sector leading the way, the lady I mentioned, Anna Roche, who is really, she was best female chef in 2017. She's a 2 Michelin star now. It's a restaurant really in a very, very small village, but people from all over the world are coming there for her. But she's been the best and the most passionate ambassador of local resources, of nature, of the brand, of the valley, of the people. So she's one of, definitely those leading the change for the valley as well.
Okay, we have a question in relation to tax and the tax derived from tourists. And Tim, it's quite specific, I think, in relation to the US, the question. But within the tourism tax, you maintain a level of that resource going into local management, and you have the intermediary Jackson Hole Tourist Board to determine where that money should be spent. Is that typical across the states, or are you untypical? And the subsidiary question is, what sort of say does the community and you in the sustainable, wearing the sustainable hat, have in the spending of that money?
So, it's a lodging or a bed tax is typical across the United States. Each state, and then oftentimes within each state, each county determines its own level of lodging or bed tax. Some states, although the lodging or bed tax goes to the state tourism office, in some cases it doesn't. It goes to the local tourism entities or local government. In some cases, for some states, it's a hybrid. Within Wyoming, as I mentioned, every 4 years by state statute, the residents, the voters of Teton County, Wyoming, vote on whether to renew the 2% lodging tax. We can actually, according to state statute, increase that all the way up to 4%. That's the maximum as it stands now in the state of Wyoming. Then it depends on the sort of the nature of the destination within Wyoming. Our destination or our county is different from all the other 22 counties in Wyoming. Because of the level of tourism we have, we get to spend a percentage of that on actually maintaining the services and infrastructure that supports visitors as well as residents, whereas most of the rest of the counties in Wyoming can only spend it on promotion and marketing.
So Tim, before you answer
management and on marketing.
Tim, before you answer the second bit, Misha, people are also asking the question, tourism taxes in Slovenia, do you have them? And in simple terms, how are they, how's that money spent and allocated?
Yes, there is tourism tax. It used to be 1.27 euros. It's not in percentages. Now it's, from last year, it's been increased. It can go up to 2.5 euro per overnight stay. In Socha Valley, it's around €2. This tax all goes to the municipality, and it is supposed, the law says, it needs to be spent on tourism infrastructure, but this tourism infrastructure is not specifically defined. So tourism infrastructure can be also something that's not directly tourism infrastructure. So municipalities are not transparent in the way they don't share concrete information where it's spent, and especially in the Socha Valley, this has been a problem. But for example, Socha Valley, I think it has about 1 million of tourism tax, but the DMO gets more money, so it's not that problematic. But tourists also pays a promotion tax. 25% of extra money is added to this tourism tax, and that money goes to Slovenian tourist boards directly, only for marketing purposes.
Okay, thank you. We're almost at the end of our time, but could I ask a question again directed to both? I think one of the constant delights of both visiting Socha Valley and Jackson Hole is the fact that whilst you have the dominant themes of the outdoors, once you're in the heart of the communities, there is the wonderful array of art, good food, and some surprises. It could be a reggae festival or a metal festival in the Socha Valley, and it's a shootout on the town square. So how important is that balance of providing our visitors with, if you like, the dominant positioning type experiences, yet at the same time ensuring the balance that addresses all their other needs? Tim, I mean, you kick that off.
Yeah. Well, it's important to understand what those other needs are too. And what you said is very true, Terry, is that Teton County, Grand Teton National Park, Yellowstone National Park, the dominant theme there is wildlife. It's wildness and scenery, pristine nature, if you will. But those cultural experiences are more often the experience going into the town of Jackson, for instance, going to the town square and the surrounding businesses. But the balance, if you will, is really difficult, I think, to continue to support if you don't have a way of connecting locals and visitors. And what I mean by that is what I said earlier about events, having key events that attract people to come to Jackson Hole and experience the culture. And those events almost always take place in the town, so that visitors are not just going out into the national parks, they're also going into the town, patronizing the restaurants, patronizing the shops, the art galleries, of which I lost count how many art galleries we have now. Does that help to answer your question, Terry?
Yeah, I think so. And Misha, how is that balance achieved within the Socha Valley?
For example, Bovec or Kobarid or Tolmin, they're gateway towns where one expects that something is happening. But then there are areas defined and also positioned. There are like valleys where you can find your own spot, your peace, where you can just relax, you're on your own. So I think I understand the balance in this way. You have a possibility to be in the middle of something, and there are some events and happening and everything. But those festivals, the reggae festival or the metal camp, the metal days, is unique or special because it's really directly targeted to a very specific niche music group. But then again, there is a possibility to go and be on your own, to be in the great outdoors, enjoy yourself, the peace, be alone. And this is still, despite the fact that it's rather a small destination, it's a vast, huge space. It's a national tourism park you're entering, actually. And you can get this balance of happening and being in peace. So I see the balance in this way.
Right. I'm going to ask one last question that's come up from our audience. Kieran is asking, in a destination where there are multiple communities, I mean, you've got the three towns in the Socha Valley. Tim, you've got, you know, Jackson, you've got the Jackson Hole and a few other communities around you within the Jackson Hole. The inevitable is that some towns will do better in tourism terms than others, and therefore is there inherent tensions or problems that emerge in trying to keep the whole together and getting all those mayors and the municipalities working together, even though tourism isn't necessarily equally dispersed? So Tim, perhaps you could answer that relatively quickly, and Misha relatively quickly, so we can bring things to an end.
Yeah, so if you think of the Yellowstone region, the center of it being Yellowstone National Park, Jackson's at the 6 as the clock. Jackson Hole is in the 6 o'clock position. Then we have other gateway communities that are at the 9, 12, and 3 o'clock positions. All those communities are doing very, very well economically, up until COVID, that is, I should say, where there's been more of a diversity of gateway communities not doing well is in how they're managing visitors. There's some visitors that are absolutely unprepared. I mean, some communities are absolutely unprepared for the crush of visitors that come in from basically late June through early September. In Jackson, it's a little bit longer of a time. So I'd say economically, all the gateway communities are doing well in terms of visitor revenue. Now, what their economic impacts are on those invisible burdens of tourism, such as infrastructure services, some communities are doing better than others.
Great, thank you. Misha?
I think that's a natural process that always some towns or some products, some areas are doing better. And I don't see it as a problem. But in the Socha Valley, maybe the problem was that Socha Bovets used to be the leader, and Kobrit and Tulmin were somewhere far behind. But then now they're catching up, and Bovets might be seeing this problem, but not in terms of tourism providers, more at the municipality mayor's level. But this is again quite a natural process, and it's not really a problem.
Okay, great. Thank you very much indeed. Well, I understand Mark is still unable to be connected, and therefore it's left to me to draw some conclusions. So I'm simply going to say thank you very, very much indeed. Tim, you had to get up relatively early to join us. Misha, you've had to stay relatively late into your evening to be with us. Thank you very much indeed for presenting the insights into how both your destinations are working. And can I just say that many of you will be familiar with the Socha Valley, even though you haven't made the connection yet, because it is the feature of Hemingway's Farewell to Arms, the wonderful novel that was set at the time when he was 1918, a volunteer ambulance driver in the Socha Valley. So turn to the Farewell to Arms to get that backstory. So thank you very much indeed. And I'm not sure if our colleagues from Forge Ireland are still with us. Doughty, would you be willing to say a few words just to conclude?
Can you hear me there? You can. Great. Just to say thanks to you also, Terry, and our guest speakers, Misha and Tim. I know Mark was struggling all right with the technology, but that's the nature of things, I suppose, these days. It's great to get that insight from a Forge Ireland perspective. As I said at the outset, our objective here is to look at that international benchmarking, see what's happening elsewhere, that we're not just keeping it to our own shores, and taking examples from other areas that are well developed, like as in Slovenia and Jackson Hole. So just to say, Gramila Mahagi, thank you very much to the speakers, and thank you all for your participation and for the questions and answers, or questions there at the end. It's great just to have that level of engagement for anyone, and we're looking forward to seeing this plan develop, the Cliff Coast plan develop in the months and years ahead. So Gramila Mahagi.
Yeah, and Dahi, if I may say thank you again to all of you for inviting Misa and I to be able to share our stories. There's a strong connection between Ireland and Jackson Hole. It's named after Davy Jackson, who's a son of an Irish immigrant who beat out the French and the English to take over the fur trapping industry here in Jackson Hole, our first economy.
I think we'll have a lot of people booking trips to Slovenia and Jackson Hole after this webinar. But look, thank you very much. There's a quick question in there. Will we have the presentations? Yes, we'll get the presentations and circulate them to the group, certainly. So Terry, thank you. Misa, Tim, Garmila Magi, and thank you again, folks.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye now.